If your super investment balance has ever dropped, you'll know the feeling isn't really about the number. Losing $50,000 off a balance that's still perfectly healthy can feel worse than never having had that $50,000 at all. And that's strange, because on paper, you're in the exact same financial position either way. There's a reason for the gap between how it feels and what's actually true. And once you understand it, market drops stop feeling quite so personal. The information on how markets and portfolios actually behave is out there if you want to work through it yourself. I just help people put a plan in place so a drop like this doesn't derail the whole thing. There's a link below. But let me show you why this feels so much worse than it is first. I've worked in financial planning since 2008, and one of the most consistent things I see is smart, sensible people become genuinely distressed by a drop that numerically barely touches their plan. Here's an example that shows exactly why this happens. Two people end up with the same amount of money. One of them used to have 2 million and it's now down to 1. The other used to have 700,000 and it's grown to 1. Same ending number, same financial position, but ask them how they feel and you'll get two completely different answers. The first person feels like they've lost something. The second feels like they've won. Nothing about their actual wealth explains that difference. Something else is going on. What's going on is that your mind doesn't measure your balance against zero. It measures it against the highest point it's ever reached. The moment your balance hits a new high, that becomes the new reference point. Not the amount you actually need, not the number that was in the plan, just the highest it's ever been. So when it drops back, even to a level that's still completely healthy, you're not comparing it to your needs. You're comparing it to that peak. And measured against that peak, it feels like a loss. Even when measured against your actual plan, nothing has really changed. That's the whole trick. The feeling of loss is real, but it's being generated by the wrong comparison. This matters more the closer you get to retirement, because that's exactly when balances tend to be the largest. Markets get watched more closely, and a drop feels the most threatening, right when you're relying on the money most directly. So, it's worth separating two different numbers. There's the highest your balance has ever been, and there's the number your actual plan is built around. Those are almost never the same figure, and it's the gap between them that's doing the most emotional damage. When the market falls, the honest question isn't how far is it from the peak, it's does this still support the plan? Almost always the answer is yes. So, next time your balance drops and it feels like a real loss, try asking yourself this: am I measuring this against my plan or against the highest number I've ever seen on screen? Because those are two very different questions. One of them tells you whether you're actually okay. The other is just your mind doing what minds do, anchoring to a peak that was never really the number that mattered. Understanding that doesn't make the drop disappear, but it does take a lot of the sting out of it. This is general in nature, so it's important to consider your own situation, because what your plan can actually absorb will be different for everyone. Now, if the peak isn't the number that matters, a natural question follows: what number does? How do you actually know if a drop is fine or genuinely a problem? That comes down to how your money is structured, not just what the market's doing. That's what this next video is about. If you'd like help working out what your own plan can actually absorb so a drop stops feeling like a crisis, I work with Australians approaching retirement in exactly this position. You can find details below.